afternoon. My name is Sarah Weiner, Program Manager of Education and Practice at the Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health. Thank you for joining us for today's ASPPH Presents Webinar, co-sponsored by Delta Omega, featuring the 2016 Delta Omega Awardees for Innovative Public Health Curriculum. Today's webinar will be 1 hour in length. We will begin with a short introduction followed by 2 presentations lasting approximately 15 to 20 minutes each and ending with a question and answer period. This webinar is part of the 2017 ASPPH Presents Monthly Series, which has been designed as a service to CEPH-accredited ASPPH member schools and programs of public health. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the ASPPH website in the Archived Webinar section soon. Additionally, this webinar has been approved for 1 hour of CPH continuing education credit. A few housekeeping items of note. While you are in listen-only mode, and your lines have been muted, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the question box. We will address your questions at the end of the presentation. We are pleased to have with us today our 2 presenters, Dr. Pamela Liberatos and Dr. Roni Neff. Dr. Liberatos is the Director of the Behavioral Sciences and Health Promotion MPH program at the New York Medical College, School of Health Sciences and Practice. She has been teaching and refining this capstone course since 2009. Her background includes over 10 years of work with community-based public health organizations and with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Health. She received her doctorate in socio-medical sciences from the Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health and a master's degree in social psychology from New York University. Dr. Roni Neff is an assistant professor in the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health Department of Environmental Health Sciences with a joint appointment in health policy and management. She also directs the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Futures program on food system environmental sustainability. She co-directs the school's certificate in food systems, the environment, and public health. Her research focuses on the issues of wasted food and public health, diet and climate change, and urban food system resilience. Dr. Neff edited the widely used textbook Introduction to the U.S. Food System, Public Health, Environment, Equity, and teaches classes on the Baltimore food system and food system environmental sustainability. Thank you both for being here today. I am going to pass it over to Penny to start the first presentation.
Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be talking about a capstone course or a culminating experience course in our program in behavioral sciences and health promotion. Along with myself, I'd like to acknowledge my colleague Dr. David Moskowitz, who was a co-developer and co-implementer of this course as I'm going to be describing it. Sorry, okay, so what I will be talking about is giving you a little bit of background on the course, how we've designed it, structured it. We're going to give you some examples from last spring's capstone course and show you some pictures of how the culmination is and the feedback that we have gotten based on this course. So this course began because it used to be that our school would have all Masters in Public Health students do a thesis. And after a while we realized that a thesis wasn't the most appropriate culminating experience for students who were going to go into practice. It worked well for students who were planning on going on to get a doctorate and were going to be more research-oriented, but not for students who were really planning to be work in public health at a public health organization. And so we started working on trying to give students a more practical way of demonstrating their skills. So we started developing it in 2009. We've made many improvements since. Every year that we teach it, there are always some improvements. Students take this as the last course prior to graduation. And it's intended to provide this bridge between the classroom and the work world, and particularly a community-based work world. So bridging that environment between school and work. And in addition, we also focus on having students meet our core and program competencies. So the course is designed to work on a public health project in collaboration with a community-based organization who we call our stakeholder. So that community-based organization we identify. So it is our responsibility as the instructors to look for a project through a community-based organization that would be amenable to this kind of collaboration. Sometimes we identify the organizations through our contacts, sometimes through practicum sites and our practicum coordinator, but we're looking for an organization that may have a need for a project to be done. It's something that they've always wanted to do, but they haven't had time to do. It may be something that they have data on a project that they haven't had a chance to analyze. And the types of projects we look for fall into these 4 types of categories. A program evaluation of a current program that they may have. They may have data that they need to have analyzed. They may want an intervention to be developed, or they may need a community health assessment to be done. Now, the reason why we focus on these 4 areas are because they overlap with the skill set for behavioral sciences and health promotion, and that we prepare students for. So once we've identified a project and a possible project and a possible stakeholder, we the instructors talk with the stakeholder and talk about what the project goals would be, and we develop these collaboratively. Obviously, one of the things that this project must be amenable to is that it has to be able to be completed within 1 academic semester. And in our case, it's the spring semester, so going from January until the beginning of May. It has to be public health focused because that's what our area is. We want it to utilize our student skill set, so in behavioral sciences and health promotion. If they're interested in analyzing data at a much higher level using all sorts of multivariate modeling and such, we may suggest that it may be more appropriate for an epidemiology capstone project than for our students. We do use some sophisticated techniques, but not to the same extent that the epidemiology students would. And we ask the stakeholders if they are amenable to allow the students to make recommendations to them based on evidence in the literature, because that's part of what we're training students to do. So the benefits of this collaboration have to be mutually beneficial to the students and to us in terms of the academic program, as well as to the stakeholder. So what's the benefit to the students? Well, they get the opportunity to work on an actual real-world public health issue and program. They gain experience in working with a stakeholder and meeting their objectives, which are not always necessarily the direction that the students might want to take something, but if the goals of the stakeholder are in a particular direction, that's the direction we have to go in. They gain experience in working within a small group to accomplish a common goal. And my experience in working in public health practice, Most projects are done with a group, not individuals just working on their own. So this is also good training for that kind of small group work. They gain confidence that their work is actually going to benefit not just the stakeholders, but very often the communities that they're working in. And most of our students are very happy to be able to see that kind of concrete connection with the community, and to be able to feel that, gee, you know, I was working on a project at school, but it's actually going to have real-world benefit. It also helps the students to build their portfolios so that the products that come out of the capstone are something that can be part of a portfolio when they are going to look for a job. So from the stakeholder side, they get a finished product that hopefully was something that they wanted. And that finished product includes a final report with which the students prepare with a fair amount of detail using, if their data was involved, then there are a lot of data tables, maybe there are also figures, there may be tables of their literature review. So it's fairly comprehensive and detailed. They get access to expertise and resources that they might normally not have access to, which I find fairly common with many community-based public health organizations. And sometimes the products that the students produce can lead to a publication. And one of the projects I'm going to describe is in the process of doing that. So the logistics. This course meets once a week for anywhere from 2 to 5 hours. It's open-ended because it depends on what needs to be done that week. Based on what that is, that's how much time we spend. It's not a set time. It depends on the work. So each group consists of a faculty member and 6 to 10 students. It depends on how many students we have graduating in that particular year. And early on in the process, we the instructors, give students both individual and group assignments to make sure that we can assess their mastery of the competencies. Then, as part of the class is organized by the instructor. The instructor keeps the timeline and makes sure that the group stays on task to meet what needs to be done within the timeline provided, but is not didactic. So there are lots of discussions among the group, and we tell the students that this is their project. So we encourage them to make suggestions, take the discussion where they think it should go. If we as the instructors, we participate, but if we as the instructors feel that they're going in a good direction, then that's fine. If we feel that they're kind of going off the rails, we'll try and nudge them back into a better direction. But it is not a top-down, the instructor says, okay, now you're doing this, now you're doing that. We try to involve them in that decision-making as much as we can, again, providing that bridge to a work environment. And then, as I mentioned, the deliverables at the end is a final report that the stakeholder gets, but also a poster presentation, which is done at the end of the year to the faculty and students at the school, and the stakeholders attend. So our timeline in terms of the course content follows this kind of structure. Early on, the students learn about the project and the target community, and then depending on what they're doing, they may be doing, whether it be a health assessment or whatever, they're going to start doing some of that secondary data for the health assessment. They may take trips to the community, they might take tours of the agency, and then they plan what their strategy is going to be. In the middle part of the semester, they're executing their strategy, again, depending on what it is that they're doing. And then the latter part of the semester, they develop their recommendations and then prepare their deliverables. The final report, the poster, and then of course we practice for that poster presentation. So I'm going to briefly describe the two projects that we did last spring in 2016. My group worked with a youth bureau for a local city, the city of White Plains, which is a very ethnically diverse city, as you can see in that picture from the youth bureau. They were interested in assessing the health needs of middle and high school students in their schools. So we went through the process of understanding the target population and understanding their health needs based on a survey that they had administered to the students that they gave to us. We had somewhere around 450 surveys which the students entered and analyzed and looked at emerging relationships among the variables, and then made recommendations to the Youth Bureau based on evidence in the literature, approaches that the students felt the Youth Bureau could pursue in developing programs for their community. The other project was done by Dr. Moskowitz. He and his group worked with the local Planned Parenthood. The Planned Parenthood was doing a teen pregnancy prevention program called Be Proud, Be Responsible, and the stakeholder wanted the students to do an evaluation of that program. So they went through the whole process of the intricacies of the program, who their target population was, what type of data were collected. They too had collected surveys from their program participants, and what was needed in terms of doing both a process and an outcome evaluation. The students ended up learning about the challenges of working with some pre-existing data. The stakeholder expectations, which were a little bit different than the direction that the students wanted to go in. Nonetheless, they had to work within those confines. They worked in a fairly complex way with upper-level statistical approaches, and it is this project that is currently now being worked upon to develop into a manuscript, which Planned Parenthood is thrilled about. So how does this culminate? As I mentioned, the students prepare a final report, they prepare their posters, they practice, and they do this poster session presentation to the stakeholders as well as to the school. This is an example of, there are 4 posters that we do for each group. This is one of the 4 for my group. As you can see, there are lots of visually appealing, hopefully, graphs to present the data. We saved most of the tables for the final report, and this is from Dr. Moskowitz's group. Again, one of the 4 posters that they presented. And this collage gives you a little bit of an idea of the session, the poster session, with the different groups. The picture in the middle on the right, our dean on the right-hand side is talking to the group, and on the bottom right, the left-hand individual is my colleague Dr. Moskowitz with his group. As you can see, we have a diverse student body, and they are very excited in working with diverse communities, which is very often where our capstone projects occur. So what's the kind of feedback that we get? And you can see that the students really are enjoying some of the aspects of what we've put together, that it's trying to replicate a real-world project, that we're not telling them what to do, that they can partially direct the direction in which this goes. There are some other comments that I didn't list here, and that mostly has to do with the workload, that students uniformly say that this is way more work than a typical course, which we tell them in advance that that is indeed the case. We structure it so that they are taking at most one other class with Capstone this semester in order to accommodate for the fact that there is a lot of work. And that comes from the fact that they have to deliver these deliverables within that 4-month time period. And that's a lot of work to do. And there's no flexibility in terms of taking away some of the work because the project has to be delivered to that stakeholder. The other thing is that we found that employers are also looking at these capstone products. As a matter of fact, just before I got on this webinar, I provided an oral recommendation for one of our students that participated in capstone last spring, and the interviewer was particularly interested in what the student did, how she did it, how she performed during this capstone project, because she said it seemed of all the academic experiences to be the most closely related to what she was actually going to be doing in a workplace setting. So finally, we'd like to thank Delta Omega for this award. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Penny, for sharing. I want to remind all participants that they can submit questions at any time during the presentation through the question box, and we will get to the questions at the end of the presentation. I'd now like to turn it over to Dr. Roni Neff.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and thank you to Delta Omega for the award and to the Association of Schools of Public Health. So I'm going to talk about our certificate in food systems, the environment, and public health. And this is a certificate program at the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins that was developed through the Center for a Livable Future. And we are an academic center that focuses at the intersection between food systems and public health. And we were founded in 1996, back when the idea that you would think about food production and public health together was kind of obscure. And nowadays, there's many students that are really interested in this. And so we get a lot of students coming to Hopkins because they're interested in exploring this topic, as well as a lot of students that get here and start kind of expanding their horizons, like maybe they came in thinking about nutrition, and then over the course of time they see the broader connections, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So first I want to introduce our teaching team, and this is a picture from last year when we actually, all of our classes were awarded by students for teaching excellence, so that was really exciting. So on the left we have Pam Berg, who directs our education programs at our center, and she submitted this application, and she gives a lot of vision and oversees a lot of the work and provides a lot of input. Then there's me. Keeve Nachman teaches 2 of the classes in the certificate that I'm going to talk about. Brent Kim contributes in a lot of different ways to our education programs and does some lectures in these classes. Bob Lawrence is our founding director of our center, and he was originally the vision behind the first class in this series and behind bringing together food systems and public health in the way that we do. So we owe a great debt to him, and he's technically retired. I say technically. He still does a lot of work. And then there's Meg Burke, who also works on our education programs. She co-teaches one of the classes with me, and she's very active in developing particularly some of our service learning activities and other activities in the education program. So what do we do? So here's, this is a very brief overview of our certificate. First of all, as we believe it's the first of its kind in the country to bring together these themes. So when we say food systems, we're talking about basically everything that it takes to get food from where it's produced to where it's consumed. So it's not just for example, the retail, but it's also the restaurants, it's the farms, it's the politics, the policy, the workers, all of those pieces together, all of the interventions are what makes up a food system. And so we take a systems approach to thinking about things and how these pieces fit together. The target audiences for the certificate are two. So primarily this reaches graduate students, and primarily it reaches students here at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, but others, graduate students at the university. And then we also reach junior and mid-level professionals who would like to strengthen their knowledge on food systems issues and also to have a credential to demonstrate that. And here's a picture from some of my students last year. They were doing one of their service learning projects at a farm, and throughout this I'm going to show you pictures of the students. So the course of study in the certificate, it's 18 credits, and two of the core classes are on site and 2 of the core classes are online. There's 4 core classes altogether, and students have to take 3 or more of them. And then they also have to take at least 1 other class that gives them perspectives on food system issues, and at least 1 skills class, and they can choose what skill they'd like to specialize in. And I'd say that many or most of the students are also taking a breadth of other courses that very directly contribute to their education on food systems and public health. So just briefly, here are our objectives. First of all, to be able to describe food systems, including the processes that create risks for workers, communities, consumers, the ecosystem, and food security. And I'd say not just processes that create risks, but also opportunities that we can see by bringing a public health lens in a place where often that public health lens hasn't yet been applied or hasn't yet been applied with the depth of expertise that students can bring to it. Describe the evolution of food systems and the impacts on the public's health. Use a systems perspective to analyze and apply critical thinking to the interrelationships. And we're not doing like systems modeling per se, although that is available in the school, but just thinking about things in terms of how all the different pieces fit together and the relationships between these elements in the food system. And we see that as really essential for moving forward, is to not take pieces in isolation, but to really look at how they all fit together. Analyze strengths and weaknesses of political, social, and economic policies to address food system issues, and apply selected skills. And some examples of those are risk assessment, advocacy, communication, and evidence-based decision rules to influence legislative and regulatory policy aimed at promoting healthy and sustainable food systems. And I'd say along with policy, we're also training students to be interventionists in program domains as well. And we also have students who are coming in, doctoral students who may want to do research. So we have a real breadth of student goals, but these are the overall program objectives. So let me tell you about the 4 core classes that we have that make up the heart of the certificate. So the first one is Food Systems and Public Health, and this is kind of the flagship class that that was created actually before my time at the center by Bob Lawrence and Polly Walker, and it was developed again at a time when people did not see the idea of food production necessarily as a subject for public health discussion. And so they brought together what evidence was available then. And I would say that since that time, the amount of evidence and the amount of material that's available to do this kind of teaching has just exploded. And that's made the class really vibrant. So they try and cover the full range of the food system. It's an online course. And so they engage students by, they have a very active discussion board. And then they also have live talks, which are pretty much weekly, and it's sort of like a webinar basically, and students have the chance to ask questions. And one of the really amazing things about that class is that it, whenever we have like a guest speaker will come here, we'll often record a lecture from them. So this is a class with lectures from many of the biggest luminaries in the field. And we have lectures from luminaries who are even deceased some years ago. For example, Rez Woolman, who was an expert on water here at the school at Johns Hopkins. So the second core class, and I should say that one is co-taught currently by Keeve Nachman and Bob Lawrence. The second one I lead, the Baltimore Food Systems class. And this one is really based on taking an urban food system as a case study of how you bring about change within an area, and so some people that aren't necessarily focused on food systems themselves will think about this in terms of how they might apply their own topic area to it. But we really try and get to all the different factors that play into bringing about change within a food system. So it's the stakeholders, the power, the policy. We try and we try and make it real. So that means that we have speakers from throughout the city's food system that come into the classroom, and their mandate is to not necessarily give this sort of standard PowerPoint, but tell them what it's really like. Give us like the behind-the-scenes picture of your job. And we also take 4 field trips out into the world. So we go to a supermarket, an urban emergency food program, an urban farm, and a rural farm, or a peri-urban farm. And through those, again, they get to hear the behind-the-scenes story. Like, everybody's been to a supermarket, but do you really know what goes on and how a supermarket could engage to work on healthy food? And another key theme from that class is addressing some of the things where it's not always simple, and where things that we think should align don't always align, and so and dealing with those challenges. And so, for example, they'll hear from a farmer who is bent on producing in a sustainable way, and he will go off railing about regulations and how they make his life difficult and how they're not necessary. And so students have to kind of grapple with putting those pieces together, and how do we make change recognizing the different needs and values that different groups are bringing to the issues. The Food System Sustainability Practicum is the third class, and I co-teach that one with Meg Berg. And that one is a sort of like the program that you heard about from Penny, kind of light. So it's one class, and we have 8-week quarters. So it's a practicum-oriented class, and the students develop projects in teams of about 5 or 6 students. And it's really oriented towards building skills and making a contribution to a community organization. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the projects are in a few minutes. And then the fourth class is Case Studies in Food Production and Public Health. And that is another online class led by Keeve Nachman. And it came together because there was so much interest and so much material that could go into that second quarter class that he realized that there was a real opportunity and need to expand and create another class that could dig deeper into some of the topics that were created there, that were examined there. Here's another picture. This one is from my Baltimore class, and this is actually we're going to be doing this tomorrow, but this is the corner store potluck lunch that I do every year. And the idea is we can't actually take a field trip into a corner store because we wouldn't fit, so we send the students out to the corner store to try to find ingredients that they might purchase to create a healthy potluck lunch. And it gives them a sense of kind of what it's like if you live in a community where you don't have good supermarket access. We focus a lot on really, there's a lot of interdisciplinary work going on through this certificate program because you can't really address food systems problems other than through interdisciplinary approaches. Let's see. And so we we also really work on bringing in people that that are in this in their lives, whether as practitioners or advocates, and also sometimes as academics. So here's an example of something that's interdisciplinary. Our center has a food system lab, and this is out at a greenhouse near the school. And we're doing aquaponics here, which is basically a closed loop system where you grow fish and then you take the waste from the fish and that serves as nutrients to grow food plants. And then the food plants clean the water and then you feed it back into the fish. And so it's a chance to talk not just about how do you create food in a small space for an urban food system, but also what's the science behind some of that. And that the lab does other food demonstration projects as well. So our certificate integrates academics and practice. As I said, we bring in experts. We have there's a textbook that I edited that is used in some of the classes. As I mentioned, behind the scenes perspectives. We ask speakers to help us understand what's needed to be successful in their jobs, and also how they got where they are. Because I think it's really important for students to get that perspective. When you see somebody and they get up there and it looks like they've always known what they're doing and they've always been as distinguished as they seem now, it's really good to kind of hear that backstory. And as I mentioned, we get out into the community a lot through these field trips. Another thing that this certificate shares in common with the program that Penny described is an emphasis on students as experts and the benefits that they can get from learning from each other as much as from learning from the people that have been working in the field. So there's a lot of discussion in the Baltimore and the practicum classes. They're very much seminar classes. And the other two use a lot of online discussion board discussions. So in the service learning projects that we do in the practicum class, here's just a set of examples just so you can see the kind of things that we do. So in one of them, we had this one, usually we divide them up into separate projects, but this one we had the whole class on one project, and they were working with the Baltimore City schools to understand the plate waste that came as a result of a new salad bar program. So here you can see they are, and they're helping the school cafeteria staff create salads, and then they collected data on what students were throwing out. And here's just an example, one of really disturbing. This is a plate of student food before they started eating, and this is what it looked like afterwards. So they basically ate the red things out of their salad and drank their apple juice. So another type of service learning project, we developed recipe cards for an urban farm so that they could help market some of their more unusual vegetables into an urban community where people may not be as experienced with some of these vegetables. We performed outreach to SNAP recipients about, SNAP is food stamps, about other opportunities for kind of support. We researched and wrote a report on the potential for urban orchards at diverse sites around the city. We gathered information about food recovery activities throughout the Chesapeake Bay region to create like a database for an organization. And then students developed a project for vermicomposting or worm composting. They developed a system and they had blueprints and stuff like that. So all of these tend to be projects where students can get out there. They're either doing research or outreach and bringing their skills into the mix. I'll just show you. Here they are planting trees for that orchard project. They did some tree planting along the way. We try and get them out in addition to doing whatever they're doing behind their computer, that their project also has something hands-on. And along with doing the projects, we do a lot of reflection. And so here's, and they do journaling. And so here's a little sample from one of the students' journals. We are very engaged with community partners. So the Baltimore class, for example, is co-taught by the Baltimore City's food policy director. I mentioned we have field trips. in the practicum class, every preceptor of a site also comes in and gives a lecture in the class. And we work closely with the leader of one of the local community organizations as well. Here's one of the guest speakers that came in from Maryland Hunger Solutions, and they all signed apples, which went for one of their campaigns. It was like a postcard apple campaign. We bring in challenging topics to the classroom. So one of the things that I do in the Baltimore class, I think you can't really talk about food systems in Baltimore without talking about race and class. So we have a pastor who comes in, and he's really good at helping students to discuss some of the topics that often people are uncomfortable talking about and they don't want to get into. And thinking about if you're coming in potentially as a person of privilege, what is it, how can you best make change within a community, and what's your role, and how can you think about that? We bring in a lot of critical literature, so it's not just reading the EPI study, it's writers that are challenging our beliefs and our assumptions. And we focus in on what are the evidence gaps and uncertainties. Here's another picture from a trip out to an urban farm. And then I mentioned that we have these elective skills-based classes. We also have skill development through a number of the assignments. For example, one that is focused on articulating and defending a position on an issue and then writing an op-ed. And a number of students have actually then gone home and published these op-eds in their hometown newspapers. Another class assignment is to write a policy memo, an elevator speech. We have students go out with older adults and do oral histories about food. In one of the classes, the students are critiquing each other's work to practice critical thinking and diplomacy and communication skills. And then service learning projects, which I mentioned. The last thing I want to say is that we do a lot of different educational programs through the Center for a Livable Future. And so our academic educational offerings are integrated with these, which is a really nice opportunity to bring things together. We have a doctoral fellowship for students interested in food systems and public health. We're about to have an MPH concentration. We have seminars, symposia. We have a high school students curriculum. And we have a class that is a massive online open courseware, or MOOC. So a lot of different things going on. It's a really exciting and vibrant place to be. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share with you, and I'm grateful for the award and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roni and Penny, for sharing with us your wonderful work. I want to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question box at any time, questions for either Penny or Roni. All right, so we will start taking questions. The first question has to do with community partners. This person is asking if either of you have any recommendations for cultivating these partnerships with stakeholders and for supporting them, and particularly maybe explaining the purpose to stakeholders. And I think that might be in reference to more of Penny's capstone course.
So I think that there are a variety of ways of cultivating community partners. If you have an MPH program, then there are community agencies that very often accept your practicum students. So there should be some relationship there. I sometimes will work with our practicum coordinator to ask her if she knows of any of the agencies that she's been working with in terms of their having needs for certain things. And she'll make the contact and then bring me in. Sometimes I will be at a conference or at a something local, and somebody asks a question from a particular agency, and I may go up to them and start chatting with them about their particular agency and what it is and then if appropriate, I might say, well, you know, we do do projects with community agencies where the students do a lot of the work, so that, and I do have to explain what it is that we do and what we're able to do, and that constraint that the project must occur, you know, in the spring during the 4-month time period. But the response I've gotten in general has been exceedingly positive. They're like, oh, I had no idea. That's really good. I'll keep that in mind. So sometimes I will have talked to somebody 2 years ago, and then they email me. I'll give them my card, and then they email me and they say, oh, do you by any chance? And sometimes we also share within our own, so if I get a project, if somebody approaches me with a project that doesn't seem appropriate for our students, then I will refer it to one of our other faculty.
I would echo that. A lot of the same types of strategies that we have here as well. Going out to meetings has been really effective, like for example, our food policy advisory committee, but there's meetings like that in many other sectors of public health. And if you go out there, and they usually go around the room and do introductions, and if you mention as part of your introduction that you've got students, people are usually pretty excited to hear about that.
Great, those are wonderful tips. The next question asks, have you had repeat stakeholder partners? So I guess that's for Penny, multiple projects with the same stakeholder.
We have. I try not to do that too often for various reasons. One is because I like to give the students different experiences, and when they come in to the poster presentations, to see different kinds of projects. But the other thing too is that very often we'll have more than one community agency that is asking us for assistance, and I feel that it's only fair that we work with a variety of stakeholders, not just one. I have done it where the same stakeholder had they were doing an evaluation. They wanted to do a pre-intervention and post-intervention, so we did one group do the pre one year and the other group do the post the following year.
And I would say for ours, so I'll share a slightly different perspective. So I've been teaching service learning classes for, I think I've taught 6 or 7 of them, and I've had a number of repeats, not repeat projects, but repeat stakeholders. For the reason that if we found a group that was really good to work with and that was a good mentor for the students and had engaging projects that the students enjoyed, then I would definitely go back to them.
Great, thank you both. This question is for Roni. Are the courses available through your center only available to those in the certificate program, or do you also offer courses for students outside of the certificate program?
Oh yeah, to be clear, these are classes that are available to anybody that enrolls. Yeah. So throughout the university, or for special studies students that register outside the university.
Great. The next one, I guess for Penny, this question asks, you mentioned individual and group assignments throughout the capstone course, and that they evaluated competencies. Are the competencies based on a particular set for the capstone, or individualized toward the actual project that the students are working on?
No, the competencies are our core and program required competencies. So this is our way of making sure that before students leave our program that they have demonstrated that they can, in an applied way, have shown that they are meeting the program competencies. Now obviously it's not all competencies, because every project would not apply to every single competency that we have, but so that from the core and program competencies, each time we do the capstone, we select the ones that are most appropriate to that project.
Okay, thank you. For Roni, just as a technical question, what interface do you use for the online discussions?
Good question. So I just know it as live talk, but I can have my colleagues get back to us, and then maybe we can share what that is. But it's a program that Hopkins uses. So.
Great. And how many students have been through the certificate program? And then follow-up, do you anticipate growing the program at all?
That's a great question because I forgot to mention that. So we've had 35 students come through the certificate program since 2014, and we have another 10 to 15 in the pipeline that we expect to finish this year. And growing it, I mean, I guess that's just a matter of the number of students that come through. So if more students are interested, then that's wonderful. We are starting up a concentration, an MPH concentration this year. So that may change the numbers. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow, that's exciting. The next question asks, I guess this is for Penny, do you also allow community organizing to be a capstone project?
We haven't done that, mostly because I'm not sure that it would utilize a main portion of the skill set of the students. None of the agencies have asked us for something like that. So I think it would depend on what exactly they wanted. If they had a project that involved that, that would be one thing. But if that was the sole purpose, I don't know, because again, we're looking for things that are going to be mechanisms where the students can apply what they have learned in that public health context.
Great.
Can I just jump in? My colleague
yes, please.
My colleague just came in and gave me the answer to the question about the live talks. So it's live talks on Adobe Connect via the JHSPH Course Plus system. So it's Adobe Connect and Course Plus.
Great, thank you so much. And I guess this might be one of the last questions. Generally, any particular recommendations for people who are looking to launch a similar program, either, I guess, a certificate program or a particular course, practicum, capstone?
Well, one thing I think is that the faculty that are involved, I think, really have to have a passion and commitment for this, because from our perspective in terms of teaching this kind of course, this is not like teaching a regular course. This is way, way more work, because we end up, each semester that we do it, it has to be recreated based on the particular project that you're working on. We also work hard to balance our classes so that the two projects that I spoke about, the students do not choose the project, and they don't choose the instructor. Dr. Moskowitz and I will sit down with the roster of students, and we try to balance the classes in terms of a variety of factors, academics for one, but lots of other things, so that, you know, some students who are more verbal and vocal and participate more versus those that are more quiet, things like that, so that the two groups are well balanced in terms of having a successful program.
And for ours, I'd say some of it is just recognizing where you have a core set of classes that come together around a theme, and it's a theme that's attractive to students, and then pulling them together and kind of thinking overarchingly about what are the gaps and what are the things, like if we wanted to educate somebody on this holistic set of issues, what else needs to go in there, and then maybe tweaking the classes accordingly. And then thinking about, I mean, we're very lucky to have Pam and Meg who really are helping us out with our education programs, and if there's a way that you could have somebody in that role to help out, that really can make a difference. And I think another piece of it is outreach, and that it's challenging to reach prospective students about some of these things, especially like if you have, there's some things like a concentration, I think, that goes on the ASPPH website, whereas the certificate doesn't, if I'm not mistaken. So how do you have prospective students know about what you're doing? So it's really thinking strategically about that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much for your time today and sharing about your wonderful courses and, well, capstone and core or certificate program. And congratulations on your award recognition. I would like to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded and it will be archived on the event page soon, along with a PDF of the presentation slides. And if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact webinars@asppph.org. And the next webinar in the ASPPH Presents series will take place February 9th. It will be about accessing and using public health data, and you can find more information about that on the ASPPH events page. Lastly, I'd like to remind everyone to save the date for the ASPPH annual meeting and Undergraduate Public Health and Global Health Education Summit, which will be taking place in mid-March in Arlington, Virginia. More information can be found on our main page. Thank you all very much. This webinar is now adjourned.
Thank you so much.